Hi, my name's Dymek. I was in the Marine Corps from November of 1945 through the Marine Corps. I got out in June of 49. Well, number one, I lied when I went in. I didn't tell them I belonged to the ROTC at high school. And they always ask that. And when I signed up, the sergeant told me, one rule, keep your mouth shut, don't volunteer for anything. About 2 weeks into it, I got called into the drill instructor's room, and they chewed my butt up, back, and down and across. Because I had military training, I know damn well you are, because you're not making any mistakes on right, left, da-da-da-da-da, the routine. Because it didn't give them anything to pat on the top of the head or something like that. Then I fessed up that I had ROTC training. So then they punished me by making me a squad leader. And then they did that because I had long legs and I could move out, and that, of course, the poor guys in the back had to move their legs something fast. So I got off pretty easy. Was it tough? You're damn right. Was it cruel? You're damn right. Were they indifferent? You're damn right. Why? Their whole intent was to break you. They break you, then they don't want you. But if you get through it, then you're going to be the guy that backs up your guy, that backs up you, that you back up somebody else. That's the whole basis. When I graduated, the day I graduated, they read off the assignments and they had me assigned to C school. And as my DI said, how in the hell did you get that? Well, you know, for the longest time, I didn't know. I was a sharpshooter, I was tall, I certainly wasn't good looking, that wasn't a qualification, so we'll scrub that one. But I had a good ability to talk. I went to a place called Cass Tech. Majority of the instructors there were professors. And they would always test us, make me turn around and represent a Republican when I hated Republicans. But I had to argue that point out. So it teaches you to measure, to react, to cover, to step back, find out if you did something wrong, correct how you're doing it wrong. I got out of there the day that we finished boot camp training. There was a number of guys waiting to take us to California for C school training. I was very fortunate, again. Spent 2 months out there, shipped us over to the East Coast to pick up an aircraft carrier. What did it teach me? Discipline. Discipline, discipline, pure and simple. Think, if you're allowed time, before you react. Don't judge everybody because somebody says something. Shut up until you know what the facts are. If you got to stall, stall. But don't make quick judgments, especially since you are not walking in their shoes. When the general asked me what I took out of boot camp, I told General Jones exactly that. Nothing bothered me. If there was a glitch in the progress, you wait and you get over the glitch. But you endeavor, you keep going. You look for the hard things to do. Easy things anybody can do. Look for the hard things you can do. Look where you can bring people in that maybe somebody doesn't want for reasons or another. But if you work with people, you'd be shocked what you're able to get out of them. My first real experience with the Marine Corps aside from boot camp and advanced training for sea duty was going aboard the USS Leyte, which was a brand new ship, and our detachment of 80 Marines were aboard there for the commissioning. The ship is not ready to go to sail until she's been properly commissioned. At that time, there were 80 Marines and 120 sailors, which were referred to as a black crew. They were the people in the engine room, etc. We had the responsibility within 3 days of landing in there and taking over the ship, of demagnetizing and loading the ship with all the ammunition it needed. For almost 2 weeks, that small contingent of people loaded all the ammunition aboard that carrier, which meant that we worked 2 8-hour shifts, did our 4-hour duty on guard duty and task, and 4 hours of sleep. That was a rough introduction into that. The Leyte first skipper was a gentleman who came out of the Alaskan waters and was very gun shy, so he spent all his time in the captain's area up on the bridge. He was always afraid we were going to run into an iceberg, even though we were doing a Mediterranean duty, or around Cuba, etc. Our first assignment was going into Guantanamo Bay, bringing people out of there, military personnel out of there, and bringing them up to Norfolk and discharging them out of there. As soon as we got there, we were immediately turned around and sent over to Chile and Peru. We had to go through the canal zone. The Marines' duty was security primarily, the prison, guards for the captain and or whoever came aboard, i.e. in a flag status or star status, to be in charge, the admiral of the fleet area. We would also augment that guard group. We did Chile first, which was quite an eye-opener, because when we went to tie up, all we could see was a mass of people at the shoreways waiting to come aboard the ship. There were launches by Chilean people that were bringing them in. We had invited all personnel, civilians, to come and visit the ship. We were the first U.S. personnel into that country since before World War II, because Chile was a neutral station. So that was a little kind of an eye-opening. The reception we got when we went ashore was literally mind-boggling. We couldn't talk to one another because we didn't understand one another. But we couldn't buy anything either. If we went into a restaurant, there'd be 10, 15, 20 people following us, insisting on paying for things. In the nation that is, at that time, was not too financially off in their populace. We had a very successful trip. We then picked up the president of Peru to accompany us as a guest to go up 3 days, slow cruise, out to sea operations, and went into Peru and met that same type of reception. Kind of an eye-opener, but also an ego thing. So you got to control yourself. The number of trips that the Leyte took was a little bit out of whack. As soon as we would come in, the max time we had would be a week and a half, 2 weeks before we would be delegated to move someplace. As soon as we got up from that trip, which we finished off with Trinidad and got up to they had then transferred our ship over to Quatrepoint. A week later, we were on our way to the Mediterranean because at that time things were a little bit touchy with the Russians, and so we were pretty much on alert all the time. We covered, in the 3 trips that we did to the Mediterranean, all the main ports. We also, in the primary of one of that, was Istanbul, Turkey. We were the first U.S. personnel to go into Istanbul, because again, they were neutral during World War II. We anchored out, but prior to getting there, we're going to be a little touchy on this area. The admiral has charge of the ships, the fleet. Captain has charge of his ship. The admiral ordered all aircraft to be posted on the flight deck, fully armed and fully fueled, because the Russians had threatened to attack us if we went into the Dardanelles, because Istanbul sits on a Black Sea. Our captain explained to him that the Dardanelles were too narrow for us to be able to swing around to gain enough speed so that we could launch aircraft. The admiral's reply was, you won't mention his name, God Almighty, we're going to be destroyed and we'll all die. And what glory we'll be having. We will be in the books. And if you're a private sitting there and listening to that, it does not give you a good feeling. We got into Istanbul, no problem out of the Russians. The second day, we were tasked to lay a wreath at their monument for soldiers. We did that in full blues. That was the first American personnel ever military to step out on that ground. The Turk detachment were all taller than we 6'4" Marines. They were big. And their military was, you're selected, you're in the Army, you're in there for 6 years, never mind going home or anything. After 6 years, you can go home. That kind of life. So you can imagine the mentality or the feeling in those people. We laid the wreath. It was a tremendous sight, the way it was done, the relationship to the Turks. The Turkish band played the American national anthem. The next day we had the Turks threw us a huge reception. And the Turkish band started out playing Turkish music, and the Turks would dance to that, and the Americans would play the American music, and some sailors would get up there, and some women, which they came out of nowhere, would dance with them. And pretty soon, after a few drinks, we hear Harry James playing, and that's coming out of the Turkish band, who copied all the music things. And the Turks came over and started dancing to the American music, and the Americans got over there and were dancing to the Turks' music. So you can see what a tremendous relationship that built right off the bat. The Turks were very, very anti-Russian. Didn't trust them at all. It took, well, let's see, the Navy decided to bring the Turkish sailors aboard from their battle wagon, which was a World War I type, and had them come aboard our ship. When some of the jarheads, which is a Marine expression, some of the jarheads said, well, we're going to go back to the ship, and the OD says, we're loaded with Turkish personnel on our ship, and they don't want to leave, and our guys don't want them to leave. So we get out there, and sure as hell, that's what it is. The other problem was American sailors were getting on the launches and going over to the Turkish ship. So in the morning, there was one huge hell of a mess because the cooks had to turn around and prepare food, not only for our personnel, but for the Turks that were there. And it literally took till about 3 o'clock that day to get them all off the ship and over to there. We went up to Izmir, down to Izmir, and that was a ceremonial thing that they do yearly in there, and again, you had that very positive reception. You literally were the introduction to many countries of what Americans were. It was a problem because we had to behave ourselves. And that's difficult when you're out to sea for 3 months and you want to go in and have something like milk to drink, which you couldn't drink. But we did it in Egypt, we did it in Algiers, we did it in the various mountain or countries. And it gave you awakening as an individual if you opened up your eyes, how damn lucky you were that you were in America. Because the poverty was absolute. We pulled into Naples 3 different times. When we came in there the first time, we were unloading supplies under the Marshall Plan. The next morning, when we went out to the area where you could buy canned goods and foods, which had nothing out there, there suddenly were all these GI cans. They weren't going to the Marshall plants. They were being hijacked and being sold to the people out there. So you realize that, boy, it ain't a nice world out there. It's cool. When you see women that became the major breadwinner in a household because she's got a child, and a child's got a bloating stomach. There's a different attitude you take away from women that find themselves in a predicament like that. Those things I brought home. Those things that when I got into a conversation with the families, women couldn't accept that. I would die before I turned to that kind of a life. And my comment was, how do you know? Have you ever seen your child starve? So don't judge people until you see what causes the problem. So the 2 years that we were on that carrier were extremely interesting because we had very little time that we spent in the States. It might be, sometimes we had 2 weeks. We never went into repair, which is normal what you did after a shakedown. Never had that opportunity. The attitude of the Jards was that we had a security job to do. We were also available to leave the ship given any circumstance, which we did one time when we had to take money over to the bank in Naples because a cruiser had been hijacked 2 months earlier by civilian vehicles coming into the square and surrounding them and taking the money. When we went in full armor, machine guns and everything, closed the square. Everybody's sitting there and screaming, what's going on? Closed the square up, did the exchange on money, unloaded, got back to the ship, no problems. Would we have opened fire if there was an attack? You bet your ass. Because we had a Marine captain who would have absolutely enjoyed it. Unfortunately, but that was it, because you had to turn around and remember you're protecting American rights and that type of thing. We went through, and I don't know if we classified it as 5 hurricanes in the time that we were out to sea that time, or 3 hurricanes with 2 hell of a big heavy storms. On one trip, we lost the destroyer Fox. We hit a mine. Who placed the mine? Was it a World War II layover, or was it a Russian drop-off there in the Mediterranean? We lost a number of sailors there, and the Fox had to be towed ashore. In the storms, we actually lost a tin can, a destroyer, where the waves were so strong that it ripped the front guns 5 inches right off of the deck of the ship. We had some strong seas. Aside from that, when I left there, I went to Great Lakes Naval Center. It served as a prison holding area for those that were coming up for court-martials. Court-martials would be held there, and if they're found guilty, they would go to Portsmouth, big prison. When I got there, first I got posted on prison duty, and 2 weeks later I was at a gate, and 2 weeks later I suddenly found myself as given a position as Peter 1 patrol car for the base. That is very heady. We had to have the security on not only the base, but the civilian employees, military employees, and traffic in and out of there, and watching the prison. So I got out of there in, April of '94. And had an opportunity to go to school, which I didn't want to finish when I was a civilian. Went to work while I was in school for an electronics outfit. Went to work for a corporation, electronics. 7 years later, I went to work for Burroughs. Interviewed, didn't know what I was going to be doing because it was all classified. At the air traffic control system at that time. It was controlled by the military. Moved my way up, and a couple of smaller programs, but then I got the program called IEMS, Improved Emergency Message Automatic Transmission System, which was taking out of the old to the aircraft to now doing it electronically to the various commands for nuclear release by the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the President. So that was pretty heavy stuff for me at that time. That resulted in one day getting a telephone call from the Secret Service about my being the guru on this type of thing, and could they talk? And I said, come on over, and we did chalk talk and made a system for the White House under the Nixon reign for presidential locator. Prior to the time that we put the system in, the president would walk out, the guard on duty would click that the president's out. And then where he showed up, there'd be a click from that man. The Secret Service had all interiors protection for the president. Communications room was downstairs. What I knew was that everything that took place of who went in, at what time, etc., was on record when they were doing the investigation of President Nixon. And I had already arranged for a visit by the president of our company to go to the White House to receive the congratulations by the president for this beautiful setup that they had called the presidential locator. And I was sweating bullets because if it came out, we would be involved in the discussion because all the stuff was on the record. And everybody was saying there wasn't a record. There was. Thank God, the gentleman in the questioning made the remark about, well, the president's got everything taped and it's in her office, and that took us completely out of it. So you talk about, oh boy, walking on thin ice on programs. I just had one after the other. Our division was on 2 occasions thankful by the corporate president for bringing him into the black, because we had major programs for the military. So I lived an exciting life. Traveled everywhere, Saudi Arabia, knowing full well that we had air groups down in there in dugouts when the president was saying, well, we're not prepared to attack yet because we want to get all our forces together. They had all the air groups that they needed over there. And when it took place, it was, you know how quick it got washed. The cooperation of the military types that I had to do with was always excellent because of the people I was dealing with. I would go into what was referred to as XCCC, which was the buzzword for the communications group of Joint Chiefs of Staff. So eventually, because we got along so well, I had my own private cup with name on it, and that was a distinctive honor right there. We worked on a number of programs that became black, out of the black portion of the budget because of the technologies that we had, which was Tempest Secure, i.e. no bombs up here, guys, and knocking out communications. Because we found out we had a weakness when we set off a nuclear explosion out in the islands, and lo and behold, it knocked out all communications in Hawaii, except those that had tubes. If you had the resistors in small pieces, you got wiped out. And the laughter of the Russian pilot that had taken a plane and landed in Japan, when the guys went to strip it, looked at there and they were all tubes. Everybody laughed and said, oh boy, are they behind. No, they weren't. They knew that the tubes wouldn't blow out in nuclear pop. But, so they would be flying and we'd be sitting there and scratching our butt. So that's why we went into that Tempest protection, which meant that no device known to man at that time could come right up next to our system and put its hearing devices on and detect anything. It was a duplex system. You opened up one, the other one would be running. If that had a problem, you switched. And between it was a conduit that didn't allow any data to sneak out one way or the other. There were a number of programs that ended up taking that technology, and a couple of them were very black funds. When the gentlemen were making trips down to Latin America, if you remember, a certain Army colonel who was doing that. Frankly, I don't think the president was aware of what was going on there. I think the boys were working around it. But you lived in that type of atmosphere. Couldn't tell anybody when you're going. Couldn't tell your family where you're going. Let you know after a while I get there and everything's clear enough, I'll call you up and let you know where I'm at. Japan, fine, no problems. Other countries I go to, no problems. Saudi Arabia, no problems, but God, what misery without a drink. With maybe 5 hours of TV, which is all in Arabic. But reading a newspaper and seeing things in a newspaper that you would normally think would be zeroed out were there. They were quite frank. The problems they had were things that, i.e., maybe were being made in Israel, as for instance, Ford Motor Company. Because one day I came out of a meeting and I said, oh, what's that Lincoln doing there? And they said, oh, that's not a Lincoln, that's a Cadillac. I said, don't tell me what a Lincoln looks like. I've had 5 of them. That's a Lincoln. No, 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 no. We go over there and I'm looking, and it's a Lincoln, except all the nameplates had been taken out in Cadillac nameplates put on there. So if they wanted to, they could get anything in the country that they wanted, including kosher pickles, because I went to the store and I said, those are kosher pickles. And everybody said, no, 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 no. Yeah. They switched labels before it came into the country. So you run into this various different patterns of people. Some of them very strict to their religion, some of them modern. A large number of people out of Saudi Arabia were educated in this country, well taken care of. They would come back from their education. They would be giving a large sum of money and allowed to go buy a housing area, which was a separate wall around a large place. And if the king ended up having a gout problem and went to Switzerland or someplace and came out well, then all debt would be forgiven. You could go out and take another loan on it right away. They were very generous to their people, and that kept them quiet. For guys like me, going to the jewelry area and shopping for something for the wife, let me tell you, you couldn't do any better, because it was simply this. You would see a piece of jewelry, nothing below 18 karat, everything above. You'd select what you wanted, they put it on a scale. They would then take the measurement, open up the paper, price of gold that day. That's the price of the item. Well, wait a minute, where's the workmanship? The government subsidizes that. Government subsidized any Saudi who wanted to drive a cab. And if he had an accident in a cab, he left it there and he went and got another one. You did not mess around with the bit of not giving somebody the right to have an income. And that included, you'd see a bundle, knapsack out in the middle of the road. And you'd say, what's that? Oh, that's a banking envelope. Banking envelope. Get their money in there from the banks. Must have rolled off the truck. Why doesn't somebody pick it up? Oh, no. You never want to pick that up. You might be accused of stealing.
Hand comes off.
Every bank you went into, there was one hand. Always one right hand. Always one hand. Cut the right hand off, you got to turn around and eat with your hand that you wipe your back with. So those are the types of enjoyments that you had being in the service. And so being a program manager and moving up into bigger projects, that's what it came to. When the president calls you in and says, it's December 5th, Ed, I want you to go to Europe. We got to get a settlement on this contract. I don't care what the hell you have to do it. And you say, geez, Christmas coming up. He says, I don't give a damn, get it done. It's done. message goes from over there to here. We won a major contract. I would get waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, this has just been released. You did what you did. I came back. I'm a hero. And I get a couple of weeks off for Christmas. Is it remembered? Yeah, I remember I had an opportunity to go down to Sacramento, take on a major job, and it was a beauty. You know the countryside, you know the style of life out there and everything else. I dreamed of it. I dreamed of it. My president said, Ed, I know they're going to offer you a good deal, etc. If you turn it down for whatever reason, I'll match their deal. And I got down there and I listened to the young ladies that were in that group. And I listened to the general manager there, and he wanted me to take over and all that stuff, and I watched it. And I said, you got a group coming in from Detroit to go over this new status? He said, yeah. I said, do yourself a favor. Let the young ladies do the performance. Let them do the presentation. He said, why? I said, they're fully informed. They're as good as I'll ever be. The only difference between them and me, I'm a male and they're a female. But they know exactly what the hell they're doing. Well, what if there's a mistake on this? It's very simple. There's a question they can't handle. I'll tell them ahead of time, you can't handle it. Don't stutter. Just look at you and you pick it up. That's all you have to do. He said, well, I guess I got to try it. The girls did a fantastic job. He said, the job's still yours. And I said, no, I'm going back. And I came back. And I leave it behind, but hell, my house was bigger than the lots out there.